Hey, just so we're clear, watching HDR videos in GNOME and watching HDR videos with GNOME are two very different things, right? Let me explain, okay? But first we need to open settings and activate the high dynamic range technique. Ugh, of course my screen recorder freaks out with HDR typical. It looks fine on my actual desktop, but nah, the video just has to glitch. Anyway, screw it, I'll just show you screenshots instead. We cool? Cool. For watching HDR in GNOME, I'm gonna use MPV Player. It's at version 0.40, that's the latest, and basically it was released like a week ago. And one of the new features we care is that HDR is now natively supported when using direct rendering as well as DMA BAF Wayland on Linux. Before we watch anything, we need to configure MPV first. I wish everything just worked out of the box, but, well, it doesn't. So I've set up these 5 configuration flags. It might not be the absolute optimal setup, but I can confirm it actually works. This enables high-quality GPU-accelerated rendering, reduces banding artifacts on anime, helps maintain color accuracy when scaling HDR content, and it applies optimizations like smoother interpolation. That uses MPV's new Vulkan-based video output backend, and it is required for proper HDR pass-through. That forces Vulkan driver instead of OpenGL, but isn't really needed. It's a leftover after testing things. That's something that you definitely need to add. It combines Wayland display with Vulkan rendering optimizations. It uses Wayland explicit sync for smoother HDR playback and reduces DMA BAF latency. Actually, HDR wasn't even working without it. That automatically switches to HDR color space when playing HDR content, and it falls back to SDR on non-HDR displays. Not particularly needed, really. And this ensures correct HDR tone mapping and avoids oversaturation. Super important. Now, there are a few more options you can use, especially if you want to experiment with HDR's color spaces, but I think those are the options if you want to watch content as it was originally intended. So the next time you will open MPV Player, you can watch an HDR movie in GNOME, but let me tell you why you can't watch HDR with GNOME. And by with GNOME, I mean by using a GNOME-based video player like Celluloid, even if it uses MPV backend. Cute! The problem is, even if GTK 418 added the color management protocol that is needed for enabling HDR context on GTK services, this is actually an opt-in feature, which means you should either build GTK with color management support, or at least you should pass it on runtime. And it's not like it's working perfectly either. No. It certainly leaves some visual artifacts behind it, and there are actually more things to address than bugs, so that most probably will come in the next major GTK release, in 6 months from now. So, without HDR-aware GTK, the cellular window itself won't trigger HDR mode, even if the video is HDR. Although it might work in full screen mode? I don't know, maybe? There is some discussion, and basically we are in Celluloid repository if you didn't notice, so there is some discussion for adding HDR support, but at the best you will need to pass that flag from earlier and also wish for the bugs to be fixed already. Anywho, so here we are, squad. One of these is HDR. I'm giving you 4 seconds to guess it, or die alone. You got it?